Oh boy, it's the Go Folk Yourself show. Just fair warning, this has naughty language, and don't tell Minnie. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest and greatest installment of Go Folk Yourself, an American podcast. Here we are going to be diverging from our normal state content to talk about something really important to us. Fucking folklore, that's right. Guess what? That's what the show's about. That's what you signed up for. There we go. As you can hear, you got Brett and Nick on the mic tonight.
It's going to be a good duo tonight.
That's right, because we're talking about something culturally relevant to Western civilization and also on a mobile device near you. So are you interested, ladies and gentlemen, in these?
Couldn't be more interested.
That's right. That's right, folks. We've got something cool to talk to you about tonight, and you guys may have already signed up for this yourself. I know I haven't.
It's definitely not furrieslive.org.
All right. So furrieslive.org, the primary website and nonprofit for furries, has just launched a new streaming service.
Stroke the tail and get her in.
Yiff it, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We're talking about Disney Plus tonight.
Oh, man. Is that better than what we had planned?
Oh, yeah. I wish that was a real thing. But you know what?
Now it is. We just birthed it into the world, and now somebody's made it for us.
And you know what? In the parallel universe string theory, it always existed, and that wasn't weird.
That's true. This is Yifcast in that string.
Thank you for listening to Yifcast. This is Fairy Wolf, your loving and serving host.
Not to mention Chestnut Fairy here.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait to talk about all the wonderful things in the fairy / fan fiction community tonight.
Tonight's episode, why Jacob really wasn't a fairy.
I know. I can't wait.
Man, this is going to be another episode. I'm writing it down.
I know. We got to keep that one for the archive of content to delete.
In the old tank.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Disney Plus content to talk to you about. So, quick question for you, Nick. What is Disney Plus? Because I have no idea.
So, for those of you playing along at home, Disney Plus is the online streaming service that has every single piece of your childhood in one place.
Every single piece?
It's got gargoyles, and that's all I care about.
It actually has gargoyles. Is actually a Disney property?
It is. Much to Ethan's chagrin, it was an ABC show, not Fox.
Huh. I thought that was a Fox Kids show.
Yeah, it was right after Rush Limbaugh for Kids.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. I used to love that show. It really informed my far-right ideology.
You haven't lived until you've watched the Alex Jones Kids Hour.
Oh.
Lucky Charms Return of the Kids Gay.
That's right. The Lucky Charms causes socialism. Socialism is bad. I don't think anybody should have health care.
Fuck your health care. Buy my swole juice.
You know, it's this is a tangent, sorry.
It's our show. That's how it works.
Of course. I was actually having a discussion with one of my colleagues tonight about how I thought it would be great for me to run on a Republican ticket, but talk about the benefits of socialism in a highly hyperbolic rural Southern man, and accuse my people that are running against me of being un-American. So, here, let me give you a taste.
Sure.
You ready for this?
I'll be generic Republican opponent Jack Johnson.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I fail to understand about my opponent, Nick, is why any good, God-loving, red-blooded American Republican will want to deny every single American listening here today free and affordable health care. Why do you think that?
Well, I just think that, we should have the freedom of choice, and a free market should dictate those choices.
Do you not think that as tax-paying Americans that we should get our fair share from the American government?
Well, sure, we should get our fair share.
Where do the taxes go? I think that we should tax corporations more to pay for our people. And I think that everybody on this stage, as a red-blooded American patriot, would agree. What do you have to say to that?
I would agree. Our government should definitely be spending the money on the people.
On the people, that's right. So, in my platform, free healthcare, free education. Why would we not want an informed voting populace? Isn't it un-American to be uninformed?
No, that goes against what we're.
I don't understand.
They won't vote for us.
But you get the idea. But to go really Rush Limbaugh, but pro-socialism, I think is very funny. I think that I could do a pretty good job of that. So, you know what? Hey, if you vote down ballot R, pay attention to who's on the name, because it might be me.
If it rhymes with Splarnigan, it's probably him.
That's me, but Splarnigan.
Anyways, you're listening to Go Folk Yourself with Butt Splarnigan. We'll be right back.
Oh, fantastic. So, yeah, Disney Plus. Pretty cool streaming service that just dropped. What did it come out 2 days ago at the recording of this?
Yeah, when we were recording it, it just came out actually yesterday. Hell,
Yeah.
It was a quick one. And, I mean, for Disney, I'm going to be real. Pretty cheap for what you get.
I know. It's only $4.99, I believe.
$6.99.
Oh, okay.
But with, like, you get, I think it's up to, like, 4 streams at a time, 9 profiles, like, unlimited downloads. I swear to God,
crazy.
we're not even sponsored by them. We just live in Orlando, so we're contractually obligated.
Yeah, of course. You know, here we are in Orlando. This episode brought to you by Disney Plus. Thank you,
Ride the
Disney.
mouse.
Ride the Ride the mouse. Oh, I don't think anybody wants to do that. But
Maybe
I don't
Minnie
know.
Mouse.
Maybe. I don't know.
They're married, so good
We
on
got to
them.
save that for Furcast.
Yes.
So, very erotic to me, by the way,
Very
just for the
erotic.
record.
Yiff it up, Minnie.
Yeah, of course. Yiff. Yes, ma'am. So, Disney Plus, great value, surprisingly.
Yep.
I'm not a huge Disney person myself, but as a Verizon subscriber, I actually got it for free. So
Look at you, Mr. Pocket Shopper.
I know. Look at that. How thrifty of me. I got a service that I'm going to look at one time and then be like, maybe later. I'm going to watch The Office again.
That's on my list.
But I got a chance to go through the app today in preparation for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Very clean design,
Super clean.
easy to use. I didn't know that you could have that many profiles on it. Obviously, it's targeted towards families, clearly.
Targeted towards families, and they even said in like a press conference yesterday, they're like, yeah, we know people are going to share passwords, like, as long as it's not out of hand. You're like, we kind of imagine, like, yeah, your parents might buy it, and you live over here, and you use it. Like, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, and also, who the fuck cares?
Right.
I'm talking to you, Netflix.
Yeah, with my
Mr.
fucking one stream at a time.
Exactly. I complain about lost revenue due to shared passwords. You didn't earn that money. I don't care.
Fuck you, Reed
Fuck
Hastings.
you. So Disney Plus drops. What does it have? It has the whole. I'm largely unfamiliar with the
Yeah.
Disney vault, I guess is what they call it.
For the
Collection?
most part, yeah. Anything that Disney has in the past not like readily available for purchase on streaming or whatever is considered in the vault. And then
so vault means you can't buy it right now.
artificial scarcity in
Wow,
business
that's
parlance.
brilliant in business.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
No,
okay.
because I remember distinctly being a kid watching those commercials, be like, they're going to put it in the vault. And my mom's like, no, they're not. And I'm like, yeah, they are. She's like, no, I swear to God, that's stupid. Sure enough, she'd go to the store in 2 weeks and she'd go, well, look at that. They're not on sale anymore.
It's in
And
the
then it
vault.
would come back in a year. But,
Huh.
she
So
was
that's been
smarter
a-
than me. But
That's been a thing that they've done historically. I thought that
Oh,
was
yeah.
something like relegated to the streaming era of like when I hear the vault, I think, oh, probably not on Netflix or
Right.
whatever.
yeah, for the like, I remember they would do it specifically with VHS. And it was brilliant. I mean, they wouldn't have to keep those same runs of tapes going for things they're just like, look, buy it now. We're going to put it away and maybe it'll come back later.
That's actually really smart. When you think of like inventory,
Yep.
like if you have units on hand that you're not selling, it's just costing you money to hold them.
No more Big Lots VHS here, boys.
I know, right? There
Save
you go.
that shit for the Warner Brothers.
That's right. We're not. This isn't Ross. Okay, this is the Disney store at the mall. All right.
You get your plush Mickey.
Uh-huh.
Whatever you do with it is up to you. This
That's
is
right.
Yiffcast.
Get those those tiny costumes, I guess, for children. I've never actually been in a
Children or
Disney
small
store.
adults.
Did dogs? Do you put them on dogs? Maybe
If
I don't
it's
know.
the right size dog.
Big dog.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Not like Ted.
Put pants on that dog. It's now Pluto. Does Pluto wear pants? I'm
Pluto
not
doesn't.
sure.
Goofy's the dog that wears
Goofy
pants.
is the betrousered one.
He is the betrousered one with the garsh and whatnot.
Got it. Son.
Son
He's
is
the one with
Max.
son, yeah.
Super radical.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Found out from Disney Plus. I thought in Goof Troop his mom was there. She is not.
I'm pretty positive he's a single dad.
He is a single dad, and it says that in the description of Goof Troop.
Really?
A single dad goes through life raising his son and dealing with all the blah, 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 blah.
Is Pauly Shore's in that? Am I wrong?
Pauly Shore is in the movie. He
Oh, okay.
plays
The Whiz.
Yeah, the Cheese Whiz guy.
Yeah, the Cheese Whiz fella. Yeah,
Yes, the fella obsessed with the cheese product.
yeah, that's a good character for Pauly Shore.
Oh, absolutely. Far better than Biodome.
Okay, hold on. Biodome was great.
Is it better than Goofy Movie, though?
Yes, absolutely. It's
That's
going to
be another episode.
It's also Encino Man is better than the Goofy movie.
Encino Man's a phenomenal movie.
Stars Brendan Fraser
can't
of
get
The
better.
Mummy.
You know what? Another sidebar, but still on Disney topic because it's a Disney movie.
Mm-hmm.
When the fuck did we stop talking about Brendan Fraser in George of the Jungle?
I don't know. Is that a Disney
Fucking,
property?
it is. Look up a picture of him because he was ripped.
Oh, I think he actually very much injured himself during that.
I would not be remotely surprised.
There's a fascinating, I think it's either a GQ or Esquire article that recaps what Brendan Fraser has been up to over the last few years. And it's heart-crushing and uplifting at the same time. He did a lot of his own stunts and severely ruined his back. And
so no more Mummy with him?
Yeah, exactly. I think he was actually very injured in the filming of the
Wow.
third Mummy, leading up to that.
That's really sad.
Yeah, and then he got really, because he was inactive, he got kind of overweight and then went really down on himself, and then he spiraled into eating disorder, into
damn.
I think he also had I think somebody assaulted him while
He's a national treasure.
I know, it's awful. Well, anyway, it'll make you feel better if you read it, because what he does now is he actually lives on a horse farm in I think upstate New York.
I'm in.
And he has therapy horses for his son who has autism. So
Well,
it's
crying in the club right now.
I know it's crazy touching, but he's getting back into film and TV now.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but it's taken him a while to get better. So that's where he went. So
That's good.
Didn't
I
mean to
was
bring you
actually
down.
really no. I'm back up now, so that's
Right.
good.
Exactly. We should be so thankful to have him.
You're welcome, America. You have Brendan.
Thank you. Don't take advantage of him. We should be thankful for him and The Mummy 1 and The Mummy 2 maybe.
Yeah, we'll leave it there though.
And then, but also maybe I don't know. I think that's it. Monkey Bone also. Sorry.
Monkey Bone is a phenomenal movie.
Didn't mean to leave that one
Oh
out.
man, I completely forgot until just now, and then it slammed into the forefront of my brain.
Oh yeah, it just right back there.
So good.
You're sitting in the theaters. You're an adolescent. It's hysterical. You rewatched it as an adult while you're
Mostly
high.
because of Elizabeth Hurley.
It's great. That's
Yeah.
what it is. So anyway,
let's reel it back in.
I know
So
that's
we
very hard.
stayed mostly on topic though. That was a lot of Disney stuff still.
Tangentially.
Tangentially.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about why we're bringing up Disney today. As most of you may or may not be aware, Disney has a really well-documented history of taking these 18th century folktales and then making them into movies that I think everybody can agree are pretty much iconic at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Disney is a huge part of American media. I mean, obviously they own a giant chunk of American
Most of it
media.
at this point now with the Fox acquisition.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's not problematic in any way, and I love
at all.
America.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the only thing Fox retained was Fox News and Fox Sports 1.
Did they retain the X-Men?
They did not.
Wow.
Disney's got them.
Wow, they got them. All of them?
All of them.
All the good ones?
All the good ones.
Wow.
Even the 90s Marvel TV show X-Men is on Disney Plus.
Is it really?
I'm so ready.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What about the James McAvoy? Is he his portrayal of Professor X?
TBD.
Is that Disney now?
I think it will revert eventually.
Huh.
I think there's some licensing things, but I think it will revert eventually.
Fantastic. I just want James McAvoy to be in the Disney.
Oh, yeah.
film.
Mostly because it's just fun to say James McAvoy.
I know. He's great. He was Mr. Tumnus. Not a Disney movie, so it's irrelevant.
Doesn't matter. Not today. But yeah, I mean, just looking at, looking straight down Main Street at Disney World or the beginning of literally any official Disney movie now, what do you see?
Cinderella's Castle.
Cinderella's Castle.
Yep.
The most famous folklore, or the biggest image is a folktale that Disney used.
Huh. Yeah, that's true. I mean, their icon definitely is reminiscent of a bygone era, clearly. And I mean, obviously, folklore is a cultural memory unto itself because it's typically an oral thing that's been passed down from generation to generation.
One of my favorite things.
Yes, our favorite oral tradition is folklore and nothing else.
Nothing else. That's what God gave us mouths for.
That's
Oral
right.
traditions.
Oral traditions only. That's where we keep it. You'll go blind otherwise.
Not unless you eat your cornflakes.
Wow, deep cut back.
What a throwback to an episode ago.
So yeah, you look down Main Street, you see Cinderella's castle, and that I forget who did Cinderella originally.
So Cinderella was originally, let me pop back through my notes here. Cinderella was a Charles Perrault story, and the movie came out in 1950, but the story came out well before that. I believe that was in like 1697.
Yeah, but it gets rehabbed a little bit later on, though, I believe.
Right.
Because I don't think the French version is the one that's like famous.
So they kind of pop around a lot. One of the things that we kind of noticed while doing research, most of these stories have passed through 1 to 3 of these people.
Right.
It's either Perrault, usually first.
Right.
Then it usually goes through some sort of revision by like the Brothers Grimm or by Hans Christian Andersen.
Yeah, that's interesting because Perrault is, what is he, 7? He's not 17. He's 18th century, right?
17th century, really late 17th.
Yeah, late 17th, and then like Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm, if I am right, mid 19th,
early
like
to mid, depending on which one it is.
Like Victorian.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like Age of Enlightenment leading into Victorian.
Yep.
For that. Okay, that
I'd
makes
say
sense.
so.
Okay.
I mean, especially for like when you look at like Anderson's body of work,
right?
He really has like a big uptick. I mean, ironically, like Disney had with the Renaissance, you know, they had in the early to mid 90s, there's just this uptick of like really high quality programming.
Right.
Similarly to him. So he had one in the early to mid 19th century where like right around the 20s, 30s, he just starts putting out like hit after hit. He's like Drake.
Yeah, wow, he's the Drake of
the Drake
Danish
of them.
folklore
Yep.
in the mid 19th century.
Drake before he got booed off stage this past weekend.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. What do we hate Drake for now?
Honestly, it was because
is that
no,
what's the problem?
You'd think because he's famous,
right?
But this one wasn't even his fault. Like it was a bunch of people that are like, "You're not the extra special person we were promised," even though they weren't promised anybody.
But he did do Hotline Bling.
He did do Hotline Bling, so we have a really hot meme to thank him for.
There we go. Thank you, Drake.
You're
and also
welcome,
thank
America.
you, Hans Christian Andersen, for being the Drake of the mid-19th century in Scandinavia.
Absolutely.
Where would we be without you? We wouldn't have all your greatest hits. And speaking of his hits, did you, like, I was doing some research on him. This guy had over 3,000 published works. First of all, how the fuck do you write that much?
Especially like the kind of things he's writing. Like it's
Right.
not like he really sat down and he's like a fortune cookie by Hans Christian Andersen.
Right. Here's a story in 3 sentences. Call it a day. And
Hi,
it's
I'm
also-
haiku writer Hans
Right.
Christian Andersen.
It's also like handwriting
Mm-hmm.
and then hand revision.
Yeah.
I would imagine leading in because obviously we have movable type at this point.
He didn't want to like put away his
But
MacBook. He's like, don't use this.
You don't use movable type until you have a handwritten manuscript.
Absolutely.
To cement the handwritten manuscript. That's crazy to me.
He's scratching this all out with a feather.
That's right. And in his funny pointed nightcap like Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yes, I'll craft another story. Let's
That-
see here.
Super wild to me. I was doing some research on him as well because I haven't thought about Hans Christian Andersen since I was in like college.
When this first kind of got pointed out.
Right, and you have to go through like Western Civ and things like that and talk
Yep.
about like the importance of this. But he's born in 1805, dies 1875. I
Good
didn't
year.
know this. Not only was he alive during the time of fucking Charles Dickens, he met Charles Dickens.
Really?
Yes, in 1847, he actually went to London specifically to meet him, and they corresponded for like a decade as friends. And because they're
Get out.
yeah, no, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because Dickens wasn't writing folklore, but he was writing tales about common people.
Yeah, he was
And-
writing things that like, I mean, now people like I remember being in high school with kids and they're just like, it doesn't resound with me, it doesn't get any. But like back then, they were very contemporary things. It'd be like now
Right.
writing a story about I don't know Twilight.
Exactly, and not to go on too long of a Dickens tangent here, but what I think because obviously like most of the people that listen to this are in America,
Right.
and if they're not in America, then
They're
it's
the
like a
Bleaches.
family in the UK, so you know about fucking Charles Dickens.
Right.
He's a national treasure for you.
You're welcome.
You're
We're
We're
welcome.
welcome, I guess. The thing that's unfortunate about Charles Dickens' writing for for a more contemporary audience is that Charles Dickens' writing was geared towards saying it out loud. And it's if you actually because most of the people that he was writing for were illiterate.
So there would have been
exactly. So it
Yeah.
was the way that he would sell his fiction was through serialized publications, and a group of 5 or 10 people would pool together funds to buy it, and the one that was literate would read it out loud to everyone.
just like read it in the pub or something.
Exactly. So there's actually a linguistic component to Dickens' writing that is lost when you do not read it out loud.
Huh.
So if you're listening to this and you have thought, wow, Dickens is boring, you would actually benefit from listening to it as an audiobook. Or if you're reading it to yourself and you don't mind looking like a crazy person,
Always do.
read it out loud. You may actually enjoy it infinitely more than you do reading it silently in your head, because it wasn't really meant to be read that way.
That makes just a world of sense, because honest to God, that was what I was thinking the whole time.
You're
I
probably
remember
like, this
reading
is
Dickens. I
fucking
was
boring.
like, I don't like it. It just it's weird. It's jumpy.
verbose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it's read aloud, it has like its own prose, like the language flows, there's alliteration, there's things that sound good when you say it, but it makes it more difficult to read silently than it does to read out loud. So
I never would have even thought about it that way.
I bet you people didn't think you were getting that tonight, did you?
Here's the edu part of the edutainment.
That's right. This is like solid edu right now. We're edging all of you right now with this.
I'm really glad you went there, because that was definitely what I thought.
The reason why I bring this up, so Dickens and Anderson correspond for 10 years. Dickens invites him over in 1857 to reconnect with his old friend.
Sleepover.
He stays for fucking 5 weeks.
Big
unexpectedly.
sleepover.
And Dickens' family complains. And they kick him out.
Charles, your friend Hans has been here for quite a while. Is he
He's
going home?
Quite peculiar. Can he leave now? We thought this would be more of a weekend thing.
Trust me, I understand. I support your
weeks.
friendships.
2 weeks tops.
Even my mother's not here for more than 3.
But now we're on week 4.5, and he's still here.
He hasn't even packed up his socks, and he has many socks.
He leaves things about the house. He acts like it's his house, and I don't think he keeps a tidy house.
He keeps calling this house Anderson Dickens. I don't. What?
Why is it
No, he's
hyphenated?
pushing me out of the room right now. I can't seem to.
He uses all the candles. I don't know what a Victorian.
Yeah, I don't know
person
whatever
would complain
Victorians do.
about.
He's ruffled my dust ruffles.
they make him. They actually ask him to leave, and it ruins their friendship. And
That'll show him.
They do not correspond after he's ejected. I thought that was just a fucking hysterical anecdote, because it was like, of course they would be friends, and that is a very human reason to have a falling out.
No, yeah, I get it. I don't let my buddies stay here for 5 weeks either.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't think to stay at any friend's house that long.
Fuck, I even threw Dan to Seattle.
Right, get the fuck out of here. But yeah, so that's a little bit about Hans Christian Andersen. Just background on there. Also, dude didn't like to fuck, by the way.
Yeah,
But
who
that
could have
is-
blamed him? I mean, if his buddy was Hans Christian Andersen.
He did not want to do it with anybody, but was attracted to both genders, like dudes and ladies.
A true ace.
True ace. Super into it. That's
dig
kind of
it.
neat.
Yeah.
The reason why he didn't pursue further, relations is he set his sights too high, because he
feel
would
ya.
go for members of the aristocracy of either sex, and then also dancers, which were well outside of his realm, apparently. And then he would bitch and moan about it to them overriding.
Okay, so maybe we're going to have to take a little shifting gears here. He's not an ace, he's an incel.
He's an incel. He's a bisexual incel.
A bincel.
Because he would write creepy letters to them.
Dear woman who was
Hey.
dancing on the pier the other night.
Dear male duke, I guess, or whatever we have.
Dear Duke of Wesselton.
You're so sexy, and I don't understand why you won't do it with me.
Look at me, I'm a troll. Wouldn't you want to get in on that?
I'm an amateur folklorist.
Trolls are sexy here in Switzerland, Sweden, where the fuck ever.
Right, I don't know, but I
Scandinavia.
did not know that about him prior to doing this
No,
research.
I had literally no idea.
Super cool that he was bisexual.
Yeah, I'm in.
And, it's, again, it adds extra layers into his character that he is always reaching for an unattainable person, regardless.
The Little Mermaid.
Exactly. Yes. It's just fascinating to me. I always love when you go into history and you find like LGBT, like historical figures, Didn't know that he was one of them.
Yeah, definitely would not have come to mind first.
Yeah, me neither. And then obviously you've got the Brothers Grimm. Also, I know we haven't talked about them too much in this because we've had too much fun with Hans Christian Andersen.
But another really prominent figure.
Right. And what's great about them is that they didn't piss off Charles Dickens' entire family.
Good.
And get ejected by his wife.
His wife actually loved the Brothers Grimm. And while he wouldn't put it in her, they did. That's
all
canon.
3 of them. Yeah, and this weird / fan fiction that we're creating.
This whole podcast is really fan fiction.
I get it.
Paul Bunyan walks in and he goes, "Hello there, Brothers Grimm."
I'm a giant. I can't possibly have relations with you, so I will exit this building.
I will leave, but I will watch through the window as you play with Mrs. Anderson.
I'll be outside with my ox, the only thing of comparable size to me. And that's the last time I'm going to reference that.
I really hope
for
my
at
mom
least
misses this episode.
2 to 3 episodes.
But I swear to God, by the time we get to like Utah, we're in.
There we go. That's coming back in Utah. Mark my words. So where are the Brothers Grimm from, by the way? I know Hans is up in Denmark. I almost said Daneland.
Old
like
Daneland.
Like that's not a historic anachronism.
He's in Daneland, while the Brothers Grimm are in the old Rhineland.
Ah, the Rhineland.
Steinau, Germany.
Wow, neat. They are also a group of, well-to-do academics, authors, and cultural researchers. Again, isn't the 19th century is fascinating to me because that could just be your thing if you were rich. I guess
I go around, I research. I'm a mushroom researcher because it's the 18th century.
I think I'll go to North America and study birds.
I'm going to putz around and become James Audubon.
Yeah, exactly. Like anybody with money could go do whatever and then become famous.
I guess that explains Nigel Thornberry, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Nigel Thornberry is like that, but
Marianne, well, if Darwin can do it, so can we. Get in the comfy.
how would he have them? I mean, obviously he's independently wealthy.
Oh, either that or, I mean, clearly I think he was born into it.
Clearly, yeah, he must have had rich parents and
Yep.
then was able to just do whatever the fuck he wants.
Absolutely.
Much like the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen.
Full circle.
Full circle. You thought it was a tangent, wasn't. So a lot of their, again, very much like Hans, their stories are about like national identity. Only theirs is a German piece rather than a Scandinavian piece. But
Makes sense.
hey, Germany and Scandinavia touch pretty
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah, basically.
Touch and tips.
You're in Northern Europe. All right, there
Yeah.
you go. What do you want from me?
Come on.
It's all
You're eating schnitzel, you're eating fish, whatever.
exactly. There's a lot of overlap between both oral traditions there, and they focus primarily on converting oral folklore into written folklore to have a record of it, which is actually like pretty much
noble. Yeah.
You're right. I mean, that's like the birthplace of like folklore with quotes around it.
The way we at least look at it.
Exactly. As a study, is these three figures right here are like the pioneers of, the whole field.
Right.
And the reason why we're able to have this fucking dumb show. Like,
I mean, we talked about it when we started talking
Uh-huh.
about, like places in folklore. We talked about the forests and the ocean and everything. And one of the things we kept coming back to is people like this, the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, Perrault, like these people that really cemented, the stories that have been told. They put their spin on it, added flavor text, and really made it something that wasn't just told because, hey, we're bored at sea. This is something that we're telling our kids. We're passing these on. These have
exactly.
a message, a purpose, and a reason.
They view it as like an archival process,
Mm-hmm.
but then also a repackaging because they do update their stories.
Got to keep it spicy.
And to make it more palatable to a modern audience. For them, the modern audience is the Victorian.
Yep.
For us, the modern audience is the moviegoer, TV consumer, streaming platform customer, whatever it may be.
Wait a
So-
minute. So you're saying there's a parallel between them and Disney?
That's right.
We'll revisit this in a little bit.
Wow. Keep a tight eye. That's a weird thing to say.
Keep a tight eye on this.
on this thread because we're coming back. to
Don't pull at this thread. We'll do it for ye.
it. I like that you went full Scottish for that for some reason.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's why we're talking about this shit because what they did in the 19th century and was pulling on threads from the 18th and 17th century, and then Disney pulls on those same threads into the 20th and now 21st century. So guess what? We've got 450 plus years of collective content to talk about that informs our goddamn streaming platform. And if that doesn't fuck you up, then I don't know what will.
Which is why this is our first 3-hour episode. So buckle up, because there's no intermission.
No intermission, no ad space, just us talking until we go hoarse. This is hardcore history.
Whoa.
Wow, there.
So when we kind of look at, as we talk about Disney and we kind of shifted into that lens, we can kind of see that there's been tons and tons of animation that they've put out that has kind of revolved around this space. When we look at shorts, we can see that there's almost 24 different shorts that Disney's put out that has been based on fairy tales, mostly by Anderson, Perrault, and some of them, you have a couple of Aesop's Fables in there that work their way in, mostly from the old Silly Symphonies series.
What is that?
So those are if you look really, really old, almost.
Are those the I guess it would be like a bumper or like a trailer to a larger piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
These were usually the ones that would occur, they would be shown before the old film reels.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Or
yeah,
the newsreels.
I remember my grandmother telling me about that, how movies would have a cartoon and then a newsreel and then the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is the pre-newsreel thing, I guess.
Right. So this would be the thing where it's look, we know you're bringing your kids here. We want a little something that's going to make them kind of laugh, maybe teach them a little something before we bore them to tears with a newsreel.
Exactly. And could you imagine if movies still did that, by the way? I'd be kind of into that.
I wish they would. Actually, you know what really kind of does something like that?
What's
this
that?
is going to sound like another plug. And please, dear God, if anybody has a connection, send them my contact info. But the Alamo Drafthouse.
Really? Do they do something similar to that?
Very similar.
Huh.
So I went to one in Denver when I was there with my wife. And they don't show any paid advertisements.
Uh-huh.
So anything they do, you go and you sit down, and they have kind of a lot of leeway between shows.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sit down, order some food, whatever. And in the space before the movie, they have stuff there's advertisements for the Draft House.
Right.
Just hey, here's how this works, here's whatever. But then there's usually a collection of things that are relevant to the movie.
Huh.
So we saw Jojo Rabbit, the Taika Waititi Nazi movie.
Is it good?
Very good.
I can't wait to watch that.
Highly recommend it, and I would gladly do an episode on that.
I love Taika Waititi.
He can do no wrong.
He is a national treasure, and he is
Kiwi treasure.
Kiwi, of course, of Hobbiton. And I could just not. I could go on for hours about how I love his creative process.
He's so creative.
Writing. I wish that in my wildest dreams I could be a fraction of how talented that guy is.
And that's kind of where they went with it. So they showed, ahead of the movie, they showed, hey, here's his first film project, from film school. Here's what he did. And it was a Nutty Professor-esque thing where he played all the roles.
Oh, that's funny.
So it was really, really funny.
Where would you have seen that otherwise?
Literally nowhere.
YouTube, probably.
Yeah.
But you have to go looking for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then they showed, hey, here's a whole clip show of different movies over time that have been poking fun at Hitler. Because they basically say this is the way people react to things and this is how they learn things and kind of digest it. So every one of them was this is from the 40s, this is from the 50s, 70s, 90s, whatever. All these different movies that had Hitler characters in them and how they basically made him to be less scary than he is because he shouldn't be celebrated, obviously.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that's kind of where they went with it.
Huh, interesting.
So I think if they were to do something like that, in a Draft House style way, the idea of a bumper before a movie is phenomenal, and I don't want to have to go back.
Yeah, I would love to have an experience like that. Usually, here in Central Florida, we have our own indie theater called the Inzian or Inzion, depending on your preferred
depending on who you ask.
Who you ask.
If you're right or if you're wrong.
I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they do shorts and things that are not popular movies that are currently out. It'll usually be an art house movie, but they don't include bumpers and stuff. Usually it's just a plug for the nonprofit and then a reel of local business and all that. But I love to see that. So that Silly Symphonies thing is super cool. That is where that started. I had no idea that they pulled Aesop's Fables for that stuff.
Yep.
I've never even heard of that until we started talking about this.
Yeah, lots of small ones. But what really kind of, really sets the stage for what we're talking about today are the feature films that they made.
Right.
And there's actually 12 of them that are based directly on fairy tales.
Really?
Yep. They have a few others. Like there's 4 of them, like Fantasia, that are like they have segments based on fairy tales. But there are 12 distinct feature films entirely based on fairy tales.
Huh. Well, obviously, we're not going to be touching on all of those tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a couple of them that we wanted to touch on, though.
Definitely. Like some of the big ones, we'll just kind of shout them out. Snow White by the Brothers Grimm. Cinderella, as we talked about, originally by Charles Perrault. Sleeping Beauty, also by Perrault. But then the ones that we're going to talk about tonight and we're going to really kind of dive into, we have kind of 3 chosen throughout time, and it's going to go kind of chronologically. We have Little Mermaid coming out in the late 80s. We have Tangled coming out in like 2010, and Frozen coming out just a few years after that. But easily one that just absolutely shattered the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, of course. So we wanted to focus on late 20th century, early 21st century, because if it's a streaming platform, these are probably the ones that A, will check the nostalgia box, and then B, be something that was released within our viewers' lifetime, too.
Absolutely.
So, or listeners, I guess. You're not really viewing us.
View
my voice, listeners.
Watch the waveform.
So, kick it off, I guess, with Little Mermaid?
Sure.
Okay.
So what we're going to do, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the Disney side of them.
You've seen it.
Yeah, you've seen it. You've got a pretty good idea. Like if I say The Little Mermaid, you're not thinking about the Hans Christian Andersen one. You're thinking about the fiery red-haired mermaid.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
The original reason I realized, okay, I'm into that.
I get that. I get why you make cartoons of that.
I see you, Disney.
I got you.
So let's talk about the Anderson version.
Okay.
Every time we go through these, they're going to be very condensed, obviously, so we're going to leave out a lot, but here's the cliff notes. In The Little Mermaid, a young mermaid is very curious about the world above the sea. So when she turns 16, her grandmother, who was actually her caretaker at the time, allowed her to swim to the surface and see what life is like up there. Unfortunately, a terrible storm swells up and wrecks a ship that she's had her eye on, particularly a ship that had a prince on it, a prince that she has had a statue of in her personal garden down underneath the sea. So what happens? She kind of funnels him away to the shore because everybody else on the ship drowns, but she's able to kind of get him to the shore to get him to be safe. While he's on the shore, he meets a princess who kind of like takes him in, takes him up to the castle. Mm-hmm. So what does the Little Mermaid do? She goes back down to the sea, talks to all her sisters and her grandmother, who happens to be a sea witch, and her grandmother says, I'll tell you what, you can live on land, but there's a terrible price. Can you guess what it is?
She's obviously has to give something to be able to do that.
Absolutely. She has to give her voice.
Yeah, and in stories like this, in order to gain something through magic, you have to give something.
Right.
So so that's in line with the movie. That part is, at least.
Yep. So far, I mean, we're not super far off, which
Yeah.
is kind of surprising considering how some of the others go.
I like that in this tale that the sea witch is her grandmother. That's kind of interesting.
Yep. For me, like I was reading it and I was like, man, this makes it like such a more personal touch for what happens.
Yeah, rather than like Ursula, who is the I guess
just the local witch,
the local sea witch, I guess, the former advisor to King Triton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So her grandmother is able to make this happen for her with sea magic. She gives up her voice, and in return, she gets legs. What she finds though is that each step on her new legs is like walking on knives.
Oh God, is that because is that part of the deal?
Or
is
who
it like
knows?
you're not used to walking, so you have atrophied stick legs?
I like to imagine that's how it feels to all of us. We just forgot.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
What horrible alternate world would that be?
It's universe B.
Oh, okay. The Berenstein Bears
Yeah, the Berenstein Bears universe. So she walks on her knife legs, and she does manage to court the prince, at least until the prince is reunited with the princess who found him stranded on the island. So even though he started falling in love with the Little Mermaid, who she doesn't have a name yet, but he starts falling in love with the Little Mermaid until he meets the princess again, where he says, I'm going to marry her. She saved my life. She's did all this.
History.
She's got it.
She got history right there.
I went to high school with her.
Yeah, I knew.
What am I going to do?
We used to date.
I mean, shit, I took her to the ice cream shop. You don't just throw that away.
I know. We were 16.
So he goes to marry her. The Little Mermaid is now on this boat because she's like, fuck it, I'm along for this ride. but she's not happy. She's obviously miserable.
Oh, she's got to be on the boat with him?
She's
With
on the
both of
boat,
them?
like, because it's the whole wedding party. It's going to be a boat wedding. So she's on with them,
You
and
know,
they're
for
like,
somebody that almost died on a boat probably wouldn't have a boat wedding, personally.
he's just trying to get over the fear the only way he knows. Head on.
I admire that.
I do too. So she's on the boat. She's miserable. So what happens? Her sisters float up from the bottom of the sea and hand her a knife. And they say, because it's from the sea witch, they said, look, Grandma gave us this knife. Stab him, kill him, and you can come back into the sea with us. And she goes, great. I fucking hate that guy. So she grabs the knife and then realizes that she walks over. She goes, I can't do this. I love him too much.
Right.
So she kisses both of them goodbye, and in her sorrow, flings herself into the ocean to drown herself.
Oh,
Yep. This is
Okay.
where it takes a hard turn.
all right.
So she does drown herself, and then her body dissolves into foam,
Okay.
but does not go away forever. From that foam arises this ethereal form that she has. She is now bound to the earth, but she is given an opportunity, basically.
Huh.
They said, look, if you want to get your soul back, you can do 300 good deeds for mankind, and then you'll get the opportunity to go to heaven.
Okay, that
Little
was
bit
unexpected.
of a turn. Yep.
Huh.
Was not expecting that. Like, no matter how weird this got, like, I was in through the knife, and I was like, yeah, I get it.
She's
Fuck
going
her.
to kill herself,
Yep.
obviously.
And then the foam becomes an angel.
Okay. Well, that is definitely exactly what happens in the Disney movie. I
Just
think
like
we can
it.
all agree.
Don't even watch it. I know it. I was there.
So she has a statue of, I guess we'll call him Prince Eric, because
Right.
that's our
Our analog.
cousin Steve. I think, whatever. It was Aladdin. Sorry,
Right.
wrong one. I tried to make a Full House reference for you kids at home, but that didn't.
It was
land.
good, though. It worked for me.
Thanks. Thanks, I appreciate that. So she has a statue of him.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It had, like, floated down, like, into the sea.
Okay.
So
got
she's
it.
like, well, I have this statue. Like, this guy's really handsome. And then she floats up there, and she goes, oh, my God, you're the guy from the statue.
"You're the statue guy."
Holy shit, I love you. And he's like, I can't hear you. You're mute. And she's like, that's right. This is all in my head.
This weird headcanon that I have of this
Yeah.
relationship that we have. Is this a Hans Christian Andersen?
Sure is.
Oh, look at that theme right there.
Love
What theme?
unrequited.
Unrequited love of an unattainable person, as mimicked by his personal life.
She
Shit.
looks to someone in the aristocracy. She
Uh-huh.
loves him. And he just kind of goes, I can't hear you. There's a blonde girl over here.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what's going on here, but this
Yeah.
ain't work. This ain't happening. Okay.
Take those knife legs and get out of here.
Just fuck right off. Hans, he said to the Little Mermaid, "You don't have a real job, Hans.
Get out of here.
Being a cultural researcher is not a job. We can't date." And that's crazy that's what was written in the story.
Sure was.
That's wild. And I could totally see why they diverged from that.
Yeah, no, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I guess that might not be great for the kids.
Kind of weird ending.
Well, it's strange.
You know, and Hans also really missed the chance to put in, where the seaweed is always greener into that.
He really did.
I don't know.
Leave it to that Caribbean frog to be in Scandinavia.
I don't know.
Who knows?
That's interesting though.
Sure is.
Wild.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that story in years.
Right.
And it's cool to kind of see the divergence in it and to kind of get a good understanding. And then when you get a good understanding of who Hans was as a guy,
Yeah.
it's like, oh God, well, that's really fucking dark.
Yep.
Ooh. Oh, well. So I guess that takes us to Tangled.
Yep.
now?
So let's talk about Tangled. So
All right.
Tangled a little bit more recent than that, obviously, just about 11 years more recent than Little Mermaid. Tangled
It's
is
only like 11 years. That's crazy.
well from Little Mermaid to Tangled, so 89 to 2010.
That's like 20 years.
21 years. That's
21. Yeah, that movie could drink by
right.
this
Yes,
point.
that's where we learned that I am bad at math.
That's fine. That's the one with Flynn Rider in it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Clearly the hottest non-prince of all the non-princes.
Clearly, yes, she would.
Oh yeah.
She can get it.
She's in like Flynn.
Rider.
Whoa.
Rider barely know her.
Got him.
Got him. Classic joke right there.
So let's talk about Tangled. One of the most interesting things about Tangled, when we look at it from a Disney perspective, is that they opted not to call it Rapunzel. So they were like doing a lot of like shopping internally, and they're like, yeah, we're working on this. We want to do Rapunzel. And then a lot of people were basically like, I'm pretty sure the guys aren't going to go for that. And they're like, what are you talking about? She's a cute little blonde girl. She's got lots of hair. What don't you like? And they're like, well, you know, little boys don't really read a lot of Rapunzel, except for me. I had the story on cassette.
I had a copy of Rapunzel in a book.
Yeah, I had a book with a cassette to go along with it.
Wow.
Yep.
Cool.
It was bitching.
That
Somebody's
sounds
like,
rad.
why did it take you so long to lose your virginity? And I'm like, shut up. I'm listening to Rapunzel.
Rapunzel in my bedroom. I'm going back to my fairy tale tapes.
Oh, she's better than you are. So, as a result of little boys, besides me and Brett not liking Rapunzel, they decided to call the movie Tangled.
Okay.
Because Flynn Rider tangled with all those men in the bar.
Really?
No, that's just because her hair's
Oh, that's surprising. I would have thought it was a hair pun.
Literally just came up with it on the spot.
Her hair was tangled.
Her hair was tangled because she didn't use Johnson & Johnson shampoo. No more tears.
This episode brought to you by Johnson & Johnson.
Sorry
it
for
tastes
the ad.
bad.
So let's talk about Rapunzel. Rapunzel's a fairy tale about the love between a young prince and a girl with long blonde hair that conquered all of the witch's evil intentions. They were persistent in their intentions on being happy together, and the witch was their biggest obstacle. Years passed by and their love grew stronger. The evil witch tried everything to split them up, but she didn't accomplish her goals. Even though they were separated for years, the prince managed to find his Rapunzel, and he never separated from her again. Love won again.
Huh. Interesting. Is this a Grimm's? Or
This is
this
a Grimm's.
Anderson?
Yep, this is a Grimm Brothers tale.
Doesn't seem like an Anderson. We're going to
Nope.
go ahead and say that one right now.
So one of the things about this one, so we did some research ahead of time, and I kind of lifted some really good synopses of these stories because they were just nice and short. But one of the things they leave out about this one is Rapunzel gets pregnant at one point while she's still locked in the tower by the witch. And she kind of remarks to the witch, she's like, hey, my dress is starting to get tighter, like, can you help me out? And she goes, why the fuck would I help you out? Your prince left you.
Dark.
Very dark. She's
Dark.
like, I just want the magic that you have. And she's like, and I want to keep you locked up here. Eventually, the prince does find her again, and he finds her like in a local pub or something like that because the witch had cut her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, he's not going to like you anymore. You don't have those long, flowing blonde locks.
You got a pixie cut.
Yeah,
That's
look at that fucking
super
pixie
not
cut.
in right now.
Yeah, you look like a lesbian. So she threw her in the
Wow.
pub.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he went in. He's like, holy shit, that's really cute. And she's like, you think so?
This
And-
whole thing.
And they were together forever. The witch is like, fuck, I didn't think it was going to be that hot, but it is.
And that's how pixie cuts got hot.
Yep.
Right there in 19th century Spandau, Germany. It was a hot Victorian bob with a fringe.
Das cut.
That's it's interesting that I know we didn't talk too much about the brothers Grimm's personal lives, but both of them actually came from like families where death was like
Very prominent, yeah.
And obviously in the Victorian era, we had large families because people died.
Yeah.
Of a
Gotta
young
hedge your
age.
bets with these
Yeah,
kids.
exactly. They both lost parents and had siblings that also died.
Yep.
So a lot of their stories have to do with the found family aspect, whereas Hans is the unfuckable person.
Look at the troll under the bridge writing
Right.
stories.
Then you've got the opposite with the Grimm's brothers, if you read into it, of like finding someone or finding your family again after having been lost. So
I mean, look at
Interesting
like
to read
Snow
into
White.
it,
You know,
yeah.
Snow White being a Grimm Brothers tale as well.
right,
She didn't have her parents. She didn't have anything. She just had a witch that tried to kill her.
right.
And she had these guys that are like, you can live with us because we're all apparently
We're
ace."
all Peter Dinklages that have names based on what we do.
I have allergies one time. They call me Sneezy.
You sneeze one time around these fucks, they call you Sneezy for the rest of your life.
Whatever. Weren't there 8 of you guys? Oh, we don't talk about goat fucky. If there's a reel of this show, that's gonna be one of them.
Absolutely, and I like the idea of like the hair is the magical ability that saves her, and you got all the like the iconography of the tower, the golden hair, her finding her true love by like giving a part of herself to invite him in, which is fascinating and cool as a storytelling element.
Very much.
And then and that also happens in Tangled as well. Like she does have that element to
Yep.
it.
So I mean, she runs away. So in her thing, she has Mother Gothel, which is kind of like the witch character, but it's a little different because Mother Gothel is keeping her for her magic. Her magic is keeping her young.
Yeah.
And she knows that's what's going on with her hair.
Right.
So as a result, when Rapunzel does eventually leave, she kind of like runs away with Flynn Rider,
Right.
much kind of to his chagrin. But, you know, it's kind of like, what do they find? What are they going to get into together that way?
Yeah.
But she does eventually cut her hair, and he still accepts her and loves her for that.
So that's the same.
Yep.
And they have that really cool like lantern scene. I remember that too. From
Yep.
That one.
They have the cool lantern scene, and there's the one where Brad Garrett sings in the bar.
That's Brad Garrett.
I think he's one of the characters in there.
Wow. Like of
Raymond
Raymond fame.
Raymond, I gotta go film the Disney movie.
I gotta be in the Tangled Raymond. Yeah, I bet you listeners didn't think we were gonna work Brad Garrett into this one.
But we are.
He's in the notes. That's right.
Right
everybody.
there, line 32, Brad Garrett. Say it, say it, say it.
Brad Garrett joke.
Ad lib Brad Garrett joke.
Did you talk about Brendan Fraser? Did you talk about Brad Garrett?
So we have just a bunch of pictures around the studio, and every so often we'll point to one of them and be like, make a joke.
Oh yeah, and you know Brad Garrett's right there next to Brendan.
Yeah.
And we do it for him.
It's
That's
right
why
above
we do
Randy
this show.
Newman.
For the Brad Garrett is just a variation on the Randy Newman.
Holy shit. I didn't
really
realize
it
that.
really is, especially the impressions that we use of Randy Newman. That was
Oh
bad.
man, my mind. I was like
Yeah.
gonna try to make something like Brett can attest to it. My mouth just moved to try to say something, but
Yeah.
it came out.
All you're thinking is now Brad Garrett.
Brad Garrett
Yep.
singing a song.
These jokes are for us. These are not for you.
I'm sorry,
okay?
guys. Like you just wasted what was that? 2 minutes?
2 minutes of your life you'll never get back, but you'll try to do a Brad Garrett as Randy Newman. I'm pretty positive of that.
I guarantee you, at least 4 people are in their car and just went, "That doesn't sound like Randy
Pause.
Newman." Oh,
Oh, they do.
wow.
And now we're on minute 3.
Minute
Okay.
3 and a little wow.
What was the other movie that we were going to talk
God.
about?
So the
I've
last
already
one.
forgotten.
Oh yeah, the last one we're going to talk about is Frozen, or in Hans Christian Andersen terms, the Snow Queen.
Great name.
Phenomenal.
Great
Like,
name.
I really like that one, especially
Sounds
like
imposing.
it's really imposing. Like the Snow Queen has such a darker feel. Actually, let's level. Frozen's
Frozen has a
pretty
dark
dark.
feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this, the person that can't touch anyone.
Yep.
Like that's sad.
Very sad and shocker, very Hans Christian Andersen.
Oh. Is this a Han story?
It is a Hans story.
Oh man, the person that can't be close to people. Shocker, Hans wrote it.
So this is a familial one, especially when we look at it from a Frozen lens. So let's kind of we'll put it in that gear first because we know that one a little better. So when we're looking at Frozen, first off, obviously a lot of people have picked up on the dynamic between Anna and Elsa.
Right.
So that kind of dynamic like sheds just a little bit of light on the bisexuality of it. I mean, obviously they're sisters, so it's not over, it's not intentional.
Right.
But there's still like they have a very close feel, like almost
Yeah.
semi-romantic, but you do get
I can
that
kinda
sense.
get
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Like you get the sense like they do truly just love each other despite obviously having a lifetime of being different and physically separated from each other.
Yeah, there's
So-
a physical barrier between them.
Yeah.
Like it's a door, isn't it? Like she's
Yep.
like locked up.
There's
Yeah.
actually several. So there's "Do You Want to Build a Snowman?"
Mhm.
That song is her actually singing to her sister through the door,
Right.
and then Anna has another later song, "Love Is an Open Door."
Oh,
she
look at
sings
that.
to
You've thought
the-
about this a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Mostly because I love this movie, and one of my
Right.
cats is named Elsa.
Oh, the secret one.
Secret cat is
Secret
Elsa.
cat is named
When we got her, she was like pure white, and we got her the year Frozen came out, so
So
it
you
was
had
just
to.
we had to.
Yeah, obviously.
So, "Love Is an Open Door" is a song that Anna sings not to her sister,
Mm-hmm.
but it represents that connection that they've had. Like she would love to be around her sister because she just needed her to open the door when she was a child.
Oh, look at that.
Now
I've
they're
thought
older.
way more critically about Frozen.
Oh
than
yeah,
I
I have a lot of problems.
Yeah, when I watch Frozen, I'm like, wow, there's trolls in it.
Oh, there's trolls and ice magic. That's
Wow,
cool.
Cool.
I want to make
I
my
like-
D&D character
I-
do that.
Yeah, exactly. that's about as far as I got there. And then I did make an ice mage, and then he was killed by kobolds.
Things a lot, kobolds.
Fucking
Fucking
kobolds.
lizards. So that's the Disney version. Let's dive very, very briefly. Like
At
I
what
will say
point in
this:
time does she get killed by kobolds?
all of them. She's always killed by kobolds. So the Snow Queen is HCA's longest and probably most popular story that he's ever written. Even just looking up synopses for these, like the synopsis for this story was longer than some of the shorts that I had found.
Yeah, it's like it feels like a novella almost.
Very much. But if we're keeping it very short, the story is basically about love between friends. A little girl named Gerda was getting ready to find her friend Kai, who disappeared. She crossed forests, mountains, and hills to come to the Snow Kingdom and bring her friend back home. There, she confronts the Snow Queen and shows her that friendship can be permanent and can last forever. You should also cherish your friends because they are the ones who are here for you in times of need.
Oh, that's nice.
Very nice wrap up, but basically what happens is, if I'm not mistaken, the Snow Queen turns to ice and shatters into like a million pieces.
Oh, so she dies.
She dies.
So like the Elsa character dies in this one.
Yes.
Huh. Interesting.
I need to go back and because like there was so much, like I didn't have time to digest all of it, but that was the gist that I got from it.
Interesting. Huh.
But
so it's similar themes. Like
similar
friendships
themes, yep.
prevail. Like what I actually really like about Frozen a lot is that it had like a feeling of like being like aromantic, you know, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Which is highly unusual in like a princess themed film.
And like there was romance. Like there's
a spark of it.
Yeah, I mean there's what's his name?
Sven.
Sven.
Yeah.
No.
No? Not
Yes.
Sven?
I can't remember. Is Sven the moose or the?
I don't know. The one
Either
that
way,
had the reindeer thing.
There's the guy who
The
plays
burly
the
blonde
king.
guy.
Yeah, the guy who plays the king in Hamilton
Yes.
is in love with Anna, the redhead.
Right.
As we all are. Everybody loves a good redhead.
Of course. We've discussed that thoroughly with the Little Mermaid.
Yep.
Would. Definitely.
I didn't think about that. I'm learning all kinds of stuff about myself today.
I know. Disney awakened your sexuality. And
So-
inhibited.
First one, then the other.
Yeah.
So there is a romance in the movie. Like Anna and Guy do have a romantic thing together. It doesn't really develop super fully until the end of the movie. But what is the main relationship really is a friend-sibling relationship. Like it's aromantic because
Yeah.
it's just a true familial love. Like
Yeah,
they love each other and they're
exactly.
doing these things because they both think about it. Like if you look from their perspectives. Elsa's like, I really, really love you. That's why you can't be anywhere near me. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to this. I'm going to that.
Right. I'm going to touch you with my cold,
cold
clammy
dead
hands.
hands.
Of death. My
And
lich hands will steal the
shit.
life from your body.
it's so good. So that's where she's coming from. And
Mhm.
Anna's like, I love you. I don't care.
Right.
I just want to be around my sister, my only remaining family.
Right.
So as a result, she does, there's a lot of parallels between the stories. There are a lot of trolls. There is a lot of magic at play. She does travel a long way to
Mm-hmm.
get to Elsa to save her and protect her and everything else.
Right.
It's just there's a blending of the characters where the Snow Queen is one of the kids.
Interesting. So it's definitely another Disney unique take
Mhm.
on an existing folkloric story.
Definitely.
And they took it into a really good direction that still maintains the integrity of the original messaging.
Yep.
which
And
is great.
Honestly, better than the original.
Yeah, I was looking over the notes on that one too, and I'm like, God, I prefer Frozen.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Little Mermaid, and I'm like,
God, I
that's
prefer
pretty
that
good.
one.
I prefer Little Mermaid the way
Yeah.
we have it. But there's
Mostly
things I
because the
like
singing
about
crab.
it. Yeah, I get it. And then in Tangled, you had that horse with the really fat ass.
There's a horse
Which
with a
is-
fat ass, and there's Pascal, the cool little chameleon guy.
Yeah, which is inexplicable.
And she's got a cast iron pan, which, as a fan of cast iron pans, I would.
I know. I get that. I tell my partner this all the time. The cast iron is truly the apex pan for the kitchen.
Right? When I
And
got it, I remember my wife, she's like, well, I mean, it's heavy. It's kind of hard to clean. I'm like, just give it time.
give it time.
This is a good relationship to build.
This
And
is
sure enough,
it's a rough start for you listeners that don't have a cast iron. It's
Start
a hard
now.
start now. Go get. They're not that expensive.
honestly, pick up a Lodge cast iron.
Uh-huh.
If you're in America, like it usually costs, what, $14 for a 10-inch?
Yep, exactly. And you know what?
Best investment you'll make in the kitchen.
And you can probably kill someone with that if you wanted
If
to.
I have to.
Yeah, exactly. You could stand your ground. This is the state of Florida. We're
Yep.
allowed to do that.
Stand your ground with a pan.
That's right. That's how that's the preferred way to do it.
Oh, I was going to make a really off-color George Zimmerman joke, but I'm going to leave it on the
we
floor.
can leave him in jail where he
Yeah.
belongs.
All right.
So
movies. So
movies,
let's kind of
yes.
we'll bring it back together because you guys have been listening to us hem and haw for like 45 minutes now.
but that's what you signed up for. You knew what you were getting into.
Part of the party.
That's right. We go way too long every single time.
You're welcome.
And you should be grateful for this content. So what I like about this, because like when we do episodes like this, we do take a divergence from what we usually talk about, which is American folklore. Obviously, this is European folklore,
Yep.
but one of the most beloved and largest entities in America is Disney, and it does influence and inform the way that stories are told in popular media. And with the launch of their new platform, there's a whole new and accessible library of material for people to access content that is based on folklore.
Absolutely.
And we haven't even touched on Sword in the Stone, which is Arthurian, Robin Hood, which is popular folklore from England, the Aristocats, which has nothing to do with folklore, but
has really cute
it
cats.
has really cute. Exactly.
He's on the piano.
I know. How does he know how to play a piano?
Come on,
He's a
Toulouse.
cat. But the reason why I think it's nice to talk about these things is because when you start to think about, like the meta that is folklore, you then get into the meta that is Western civilization literature / media / the influence that it weighs on pretty much every movie that you watch, every book that you've read, everything that you've learned, probably your sense of morality, maybe?
Morality, identity,
Yeah.
like just these things that just transcend so much more. Like if I say The Little Mermaid, you're going to picture The Little Mermaid.
Exactly.
What you're not going to picture is the lessons that you learn from it. Like, how many times have we made a joke just on this fucking show? How many times have I said, but Daddy, I love him because of some girl that's done something in one of our stories?
Exactly.
Like, these things transcend more than just the story. And it really bubbles up to something I was talking about with a friend earlier. We were talking about our show, and we are just kind of like shooting the breeze about like what was going to kind of talk about it. But he really gave me something interesting. He said the whole point of your show is kind of like, does it matter? And not in a cynical way. He basically said it does matter. He said, but not because of anything tangible. He said it just matters because it is, and because these things are so much more. He goes, you guys are talking about stories that just are a part of the fabric of our lives. It's not just like, what does the Wolfman mean?
It's interesting too when you start thinking critically about like what folklore is and why it's important too, because it's one of those things where it's like it's a repeated tale that contains a encapsulated message that's easy to transmit verbally.
Yep.
And it's something that's short because it needs to be short if you want to repeat it.
Yeah, short and it's easy to remember. Like it sticks.
Exactly. And what folklore does is captures an imaginary of a specific time, maybe, but delivers either a cautionary tale or a life lesson or a moral lesson or just an overall theme that is, repeatable and has been repeated for hundreds of years. Like, think about like with Little Mermaid. In order to get something, you have to give something. In like Rapunzel, you have to allow a part of yourself to be shared with somebody to let them in.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get that by just, necessarily, consuming a piece of pop media.
Right.
But that's the overall theme.
Yeah.
And what's cool about all of these is that the folklore in Western Civ shows both archetypes and tropes, right? Like what's cool about them is these authors and researchers, folklorists, whatever you want to call them, have established things that we all know and recognize. Like in these stories, you have like the mythical professional, right? Like you've got the woodcutter, the blacksmith, the miller's daughter, like things
even
like
in
that.
Sleeping Beauty, how
Right.
does she go to sleep? She pricks her finger on the spinning wheel.
Exactly. And you have like Rumpelstiltskin.
Yep.
That's a spinning thing. All of these things are like old world professions that are now irrelevant.
I want to make a new one, but it's about like Dave, the computer programmer.
Honestly, you could probably do that, and it would probably be entertaining, and everybody would understand what was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what the power is behind all of this. Like the idea that the symbols in these stories aren't new.
No,
They will
almost never.
They will never be new. And even if you were to write the story about Dave the computer programmer, the language that you would write that in would be in symbols that were defined by stories like this that contain themes that were pulled directly out of these. So in an essence, literally nothing is new.
No, I mean,
And-
even
and
like look
that's-
at any story ever, any formulaic style story with a protagonist and an antagonist. Like everything follows the hero's journey.
Right.
Doesn't matter really what you choose. Like it's going to follow this sort of formula in one way or another, and that's fine. That's a good thing. These patterns, like this is what humans were literally built to recognize.
Right.
Patterns and
You see
being
patterns
able to
in
expect
things.
things. This is what makes them stick with us.
And being able to discern a pattern is something that goes into critical thought, into comprehension, into reading comprehension and things like that. And it's why we talk about this. We're not just all about the dick jokes and fart humor here.
Although it's about 40%.
It's probably more higher than that, I'd imagine. But when we talk about topics like this, we really get a chance to dive into the analytical side to it.
Yeah.
Because in order for us to make those fart jokes, we have to analyze.
They gotta mean something.
Exactly. It just can't be fart jokes for the sake of fart jokes. Then we end up in idiocracy.
And I mean, phenomenal movie. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But don't want to live there.
Don't want to be there. Don't want you nice people to live there either.
I might want to work like a week on Herbert Camacho's cabinet just to see what it's like.
I know, I would too. Mountain Dew, Herbert Mountain Dew Camacho. Hilarious name. And then also having a character just named Beef Supreme. Fantastic.
Not to mention the hit TV show Ow My Balls.
Not that far off from something I would probably
No,
actually
I've
watch.
watched enough America's Funniest Home Videos to know it's Ow My Balls.
Thanks, Bob Saget.
Love it.
American cultural icon. So, and we thank Christian God every day that we now have YouTube and no longer have to be subjected to only a 30-minute block of curated home videos.
All fail videos all the time.
All day long.
So I guess to try to to get these ponies wrangled back up and in the stable, we can really kind of end it with this. I think the best reason that these Disney movies exist, and the best part about the fact that yes, they were changed for a good reason. They were making these stories more palatable for the kids that were going to watch them and for the families that were going to share them. Because ultimately, the original story would not have resonated as much. So the fact that they made these changes, I mean, like we said, we preferred the Disney version in all three of them, and it might be because that's the one we're exposed to. But when you think critically about the other ones, like it just doesn't land in the same way that these that are packaged a little bit more nicely do.
But you also have to think those stories were repackaged by Victorians from 100 years prior.
Absolutely.
To make them more palatable for Victorians. So they were written for an audience of...
I don't even want to know what it was like before they got their hands on it.
Right? There is literally... And the sad thing is we'll literally probably never be able to know.
We won't be able to.
Because in order to study folklore, you have to go to the original source, and guess what?
They did.
They're all dead, and they didn't write it down because they didn't have to write it down.
Right.
And guess what? Each one of these stories doesn't just have one version. Because it's a regional story, it is hyper-localized. And so it would be impossible to say exactly where it came from and what time period. They contain so many nuggets of information, whether it be looking at it from the lens of I want to learn about Victorian morality, or if I can unpack it a little bit further, maybe I can learn about pre-industrial revolution morality or what was important to them. And then even further than that, you can look at some of these and go, oh, wow, there's like an element of pre-Christian Northern European to this.
Yeah,
And
very much.
That's crazy to have that all come from the same thing, which can be repackaged into a Disney movie.
And it's thanks to those movies that we now have these timeless movies that appeal to people that will continue to watch them, continue to discuss them. And I mean, we've seen it even with our own friends, with our friends our age that have kids. They're showing them these same movies that came out 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Exactly. They're letting them watch Song of the South. Actually,
Yeah.
no one watches that one.
Oof.
I couldn't even get that one out.
God,
like
that was
it
close.
Was so serious.
So thanks to these movies, we can now waste a little bit, about an hour. Oh my God, we almost nailed it.
I know,
But we can
right?
waste an hour on an internet podcast for dozens of you to listen to.
Dozens and dozens of you on a good day.
Well,
So,
thanks for listening, everybody.
hope you've liked this divergence from our main content, which is state-oriented. We'll be back next time with something equally weird and maybe state-related, but also maybe not. Who knows?
We never know.
We don't know either until we're about to sit down and record it.
Sometimes not even then.
Sometimes it's flying by the seat of our pants, and that's okay. But hey, if you guys like this, go ahead and interact with us on our various social media platforms because that would be super cool. We'd like to know if you people like this. And if you don't like them, well, we'll probably still keep doing them because they're fun to record.
We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
We've listened to the negative feedback, and we've fixed some of the things if we care to. Other times, it's just because you don't like our show.
Yeah, we're like, unsubscribe.
Yeah. But, I mean, truth be told, this show really grows with feedback from you guys and just sharing it and telling your friends. The best way to, let other people know to listen to it is to tell them to listen to it. They take your reviews way better than ours.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
share it.
Yeah, we could have some punchy, stupid thing on Twitter, but you saying, hey, this hour-long, time-wasting, stupid thing that I think is mildly entertaining is worth a work commute for you.
Hey, do you like The Little Mermaid? What if they talked about, Brad Garrett in the middle of it? That's what you're getting there.
Yeah, and honestly, what show is doing that for you?
I'll tell you what show, none of them. This is me, Brad Garrett, telling you to tell your friends to listen to Go Folk Yourself.
Raymond, you got to turn off the podcast. Mom's going to get real mad.
Oh, sorry, I gotta cut the recording right now.